Let's get talking. The call for dialogue and negotiation on the national minimum wage in Nigeria has once again taken center stage as the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, NECA, urges the Nigerian Labour Congress to return to the negotiation table. This is coming amidst ongoing discussions and debates surrounding the minimum wage issue, highlighting the importance of constructive dialogue and collaboration between labour unions and the federal government in addressing critical labour-related matters. NECA's appeal for the NLC to engage in negotiations reflects a commitment to finding mutual beneficial solutions that balance the interests of workers and employers. But let's get more on this and put into proper perspective. I'm being joined live from our Abuja studios by the Director General, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, Sadewale Oyerinde. Thank you so much. It's good to have you start the show here in Abuja.
Thank you for having us once again.
Yes, I'm really going to start with this issue of what we're saying. 48,000, 56,000, 615,000. These are the figures we are seeing. Yeah. But what's really happening with this dialogue? What happened before now? Where are we?
Well, thank you once again. You saw the figures yesterday. They were meant to be hitherto, they were secrets, as it were.
Oh, okay.
Although the 615,000 came on here, earlier than the 48 and 56,000.
Yes.
And characteristics of negotiations, as it were. Each party and those parties involved in this, the government, the private sector,
yes,
and then the organized labor are supposed to come up with their positions. And traditionally, you come up with your first position, which subsequently will lead to negotiation, negotiation, alignment, and realignment of positions. So what was presented yesterday was the first position. We saw Labour's own presented with its justification. The employers also, as you've heard in the news yesterday, it's no more secret, presented our position after looking at all the variables. And to the extent of the validity of us, we also presented our 54,000 as the ideal minimum wage. I think it's very important that we Nigerians understand this. It's minimum wage. It is not. We are not talking of living wage.
Okay.
It's minimum wage, the lowest amount that no worker should earn. That is it. And then the government also presented its 48,000. And the idea was that, okay, after the presentation, they will go into the core negotiations. But unfortunately, Labour exercised its right of walkout, and they walked out of the conversation yesterday.
That's not looking too good. Now you are appealing to Labour to come back to the negotiation table. Tell us how this will shape up, because I'm looking at the figures and the reality on ground.
There's really no option than to come back to the table. That's just the reality of it. We've started the process. In order not to make the process protracted, then we have to come back to the table. The risk for us is the longer it gets, the more difficult it becomes. And while some might view the issue of, we can negotiate for 10 years and then backdate the implementation to 10 years before, it creates problem for the private sector, and nobody wants to go through that rigmarole, where the business is not created to perpetually negotiate. And that is one of the reasons why we say, look, we appeal to organized labor, and I know a lot has been done within yesterday and today. The committee also met this morning. A lot has been done since yesterday by the leadership of the National Minimum Wage Committee. And we believe strongly that the Labour will come back to the table.
Let's look at other contending issues here with regards to this minimum wage or living wage minimum wage. I think we need to even break this down. Minimum wage, living wage. Where do we stand in all of this before I go to? Because many will say, it's a 2-in-1 question. With the situation on ground, government talking about revenue challenges, we know subsidy is out, more money is coming into government coffers. What do you think of this figure government is giving? And of course, what more can be done for looking at the contending issues?
The context of the minimum wage negotiation itself is not an abstract context. It's enshrined in a framework, which is Convention 131, that specifies the parameters that we should look at. One of those parameters is the needs of workers and their families, which is valid. Then you have to take a look also the economic situation of the country, the country context. What exactly is your economic situation at this certain time. Then you have to look at issues concerning productivity. You have to look at issue of affordability. So many issues you have to bring in context. And the beauty of this process is, the parties involved have to find a way to come to a consensus and arrive at a balance. Because if you agree on a minimum wage that is too low, then you invariably will be perpetuating poverty. Now, if you agree on a minimum wage that is too high, you've already created the ground for non-compliance, which also can lead to of massive unemployment rate. So the idea is, through the negotiations, we arrive at a consensus, a figure that is equitable, that is affordable, and that is realistic. So that is the task, the big task of the committee. As I said, and I would like to reemphasize, what the committee is tasked to negotiate is the national minimum wage. We are not negotiating a national salary, we are not negotiating a living wage. It is strictly the national minimum wage, the floor wage, for which no employer should pay. And you agree with me that it's when we talk of the minimum, a lot of things happen, as you progress, in the course of your career. And at the private sector level, negotiation goes on every 2 years, every 2 or 3 years. There's collective bargaining that goes on every 3 years at the private sector level. So to a large extent, the private sector has demonstrated leadership in context, in practice, and in our commitment to the constant review of this national minimum wage that we're talking about now. So as far as we are concerned, the private sector will not suffer double jeopardy, as it were. We have appealed to our colleagues that they should come back to the negotiation table. The commitment at the committee level is also very absolute, that we have to review the national minimum wage and we exercise this principle of give and take. I think that should get us to the El Dorado in the context of this conversation.
The challenge is looking at the low purchasing power of Nigerians and the hike of prices all across town. My next discussion will be around inflation, but I'm looking at how this affects workers. Now, this money, let's assume 48,000 naira. Many will say electricity bill now.
Employers are offering
54,000
as the starting point.
Considering the challenge they also face, economic challenges they face, we'll be talking about taxes and levies.
Absolutely.
How are they going to cope with this?
Now,
how easy would this be?
The dynamics of the negotiation, actually factored in those parameters.
Okay.
I said the 615,000 by labor is valid to the extent of labor's reality. Those realities cannot or should not or necessarily be my realities. So the private sector have looked at the whole gamut of issues that is facing, and it says, look, within the context of our reality, this is our takeoff point. Whether those realities whether they make sense to you or they don't make sense, it's a different thing. But to me, that is my reality, and you have to respect that. Government has submitted its position. Whether the government reality, whether it makes sense to me or it doesn't, the first courtesy I have to extend is that, look, I agree with your reality, but government must fill the shoes of labor. It must fill the shoes of the private sector. The private sector must fill the shoes of labor where it pinches. Must also fill the shoes of government where it pinches government. So all of us must put ourselves in the position of each other for us to arrive at, look, okay, in the context of the multidimensional issues that we're having, you mentioned inflation. We seem to focus too much on inflation without focusing on interest rates. We seem to focus too much on inflation, and we're not looking at exchange rates. Those are direct hits at the business. Issue of interest rates, issue of exchange rate. They are direct hits at the lifeblood of the business. So all those parameters is what we are bringing on board. And for you to bring all those parameters on board, a very high level of good faith must be exercised by all parties before we can make progress.
Again, government will come out to say we need to be on the negotiation tables, come up with a figure, and Labour's making this position and all. If Labour decides not to come back to this negotiation table, the next thing might be protests and strikes and all of that. This will also impact negatively on the economy and even on the business environment. So do you think it could get to that level?
I guarantee you that Labour will come back onto the negotiation table. Labour, we have very responsible colleagues in Labour. I will believe very strongly, without speaking for Labour, we believe very strongly that Labour will come back to the negotiation table. And also, I think it's also important to mention this. You know, that you cannot tell me that you are broke and I see you driving the latest cars on a weekly basis. Then it creates, I'm basically disconnected from reality. And speaking to government's needs for fiscal responsibility. We cannot see what is happening in government, the unfortunate news that we sometimes hear about fiscal indiscipline, and then when it comes to this core conversation about wages, about welfare, about private sector survival, then government says it doesn't have money or there's challenges with revenue, while in the real sense, you know, we can't connect with that reality that we're expressing. So government have to do its bit also to be fiscally disciplined, if they want labor, if they want the private sector to continue to sacrifice.
Almost finally, with regards to this, the business community that you relate with, of course, they're grappling with myriads of challenges, and we've talked about it in recent times. That some are even leaving the country. Do you think, or what is your outlook? You know, I always like to have an outlook because generally the issues are just a series of issues. What is your outlook for businesses still operating in Nigeria, considering the condition and environment?
First, let me commend the resilience and doggedness of an average Nigerian business owner. Yes. If you don't run a business, then you cannot really understand what it takes for you to run a business in this system. You know, we shared yesterday during the committee meeting about over 60 taxes, levies, and fees that private sector is currently paying. Different kind of contribution you have to make here and there. We contribute 10% of payroll to pension, to ITF, to NSTF. We're facing a different kind of onslaught from the National Assembly, the Committee of National Assembly, which creates this siege on organized businesses. And this is our view. Look, the economy cannot survive for long if you don't take care of the businesses that are driving the economy. And looking at the projection, why the government have done well with the context of those reforms, we support those reforms. We also be implemented with some level of human face, with a deepened engagement with the private sector. You cannot shave my head behind me. So if the policy, if the reforms will affect me, then it is necessary that you bring me to the table. So it's not only seek my cooperation to make sure that this reform works, but also to let me understand what exactly you are trying to achieve. So projection-wise, we had noted in January that from June, July, end of second quarter to the third quarter, we should be seeing the benefit of the reforms. We are still holding to that projection that will progressively things will continue to improve as government continue to tinker on those policies. Well, one of my mentors said it's better to be inconsistent sometimes than to persist in error. And the government should not be scared.
Do you think government is sensitive? Yes, let me ask that before wrapping up. Sensitive to the plight of the masses, considering all of this you are
well, from the engagement we've had,
the president actually said, "Oh, that should be put on hold." Some say, "Oh, I think the president is listening."
You know, from the engagement we've had with the Minister for Finance and Minister of the Economy, engagement we've had with the Minister of State for Labour and Employment, engagement we've had with some agencies, ministry, we believe strongly that the government is listening. And I think the president demonstrated that with the expatriate employment level, the suspension first. I think he also responded swiftly to the issue of to this cyber security. Look, when there is pressure, as someone will say, pressure to work. When there are pressures on the ministers to perform, then everybody most likely will want to justify his stay in government by trying to address the issues that is most germane to the government at any point in time. And currently, the issue that is germane to government now is revenue issues.
Yes.
So you can see all those what we call hasty implementations or hasty applications of those reforms. They are basically focused on generating revenue, which basically are counterproductive to the larger goal of the government from our perspective. So while the government is listening, we hope they will continue to listen, because we will continue to engage and engage constructively. But we see there is light at the end of the tunnel. Somebody asked me, he said, do I see light at the end of the tunnel? We said, look, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. Now, what you don't know is how long is the tunnel. And no matter how long is the tunnel, if you are equipped with the necessary tools to navigate the tunnel, your coming out of the tunnel and seeing the light will be faster. If you are not equipped to deal with the issues in the tunnel, then you probably will meet scorpions in the tunnel, you probably will meet rats in the tunnel that might want to hinder your movement. But once you are equipped, sufficiently equipped, and sufficiently you carry the stakeholders along, then you're navigating the tunnel will be faster than expected.
I must thank you so much, Mr. Adewale. Thank you for starting with us here in Abuja. It's our first show.
Our pleasure.
Abuja Thank you so much, Director General.
It's on record that we started.
Yes, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, live from Abuja studio. Thank you so much, and do enjoy your deliberations as it goes on.
Thank you for having us once again.
Well, coming up on the show, we will be looking at the fundamentals of Nigeria's inflation figure as it hits 33.69% in the month of April 2024. International business and project development consultant